last question. I'm asking everyone this question about disclosure. Are we close? And if we are and it happens, what will the world look like in your opinion?
I feel like it will. You know, this is too big a thing, and there's too many people know about it to really be kept quiet and secret for too much longer, I believe. Sooner or later, everybody's laundry's got to air. And even with politics, the way that they are, you know, if those idiots would all quit fighting each other and start getting along, we could be a lot better off, a lot further in this world.
Yeah.
But I think you know, the alien race is just like the races here on Earth. We got all different kind of races. We got Muslim, Buddhist, and you know, everything in here, and none of them get along too much, one religion with the other religion. But sooner or later they're gonna have to come to terms with things. You got some good people, you got some bad people, and you got some pure damn mean people, and I think all the goods gonna come together before long.
Now, because of technology, everybody's got a cell phone, which they have the capability of shooting video, audio, photos. And so we're getting a lot more evidence coming in through cell phones, because before, you know, our evidence was, you know, people on vacation. They just happen to have a, you know, 8mm camera, or they have a, you know, box camera or something. But now everybody's got it, so they see something and, you know, off they go. Of course, we got the people out there faking evidence. But the thing is I think what's happening now is more and more people in the public are being more aware that there's other things, that something's going on out there, because it's just too hard to put under the carpet like they used to do. There was a National Disinformation Act years ago where, you know, the government was not allowed to lie to the American people, but if they told them a little tiny bit of truth, then they could tell them a lot of untruth and get away with not violating any policies here, you know. But the bottom line is we got more people out there now that are experiencing this, so there's a lot more communication now that we have, you know, the internet. You know, it's really easy for people to communicate in other countries, go back and forth with, you know, all the social media programs we have now. So it's really, really hard to to keep people from talking.
Well, my point of view is Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace. He told 60 Minutes 3 years ago, disclosure. That happened in the 1940s with the headline, Flying Saucer Crashes on the Ranch. We have been having disclosure around this planet with thousands of books, thousands of newspaper photos, all of it since World War II. What we are waiting for is official confirmation from the world governments to all of the people at the same time. We are not alone in this universe, and we never have been. And now we're going to have to change a lot of history books. We're going to have to change a lot of things, but it would be better now for all of you to get up to speed on what the truth is about our past, our present, and our future, than to continue going into the rest of the 21st century, perpetuating the lies that an increasingly large number of people on this planet in military and in science and the power brokers know. When they become the biggest island on Earth, those that know, then what does happen to those that have been kept in ignorance? That is the part that I do not think is fair. I feel a tremendous empathy with my fellow humans. I think that this is exactly the time when all of the truth should be told, the good, the bad, and the neutral, and go into the 21st century with everybody on Earth finding a reason for why it is important to study, for the world to be given more education, so that we can take people who have good brains in an island in the Philippines who do not have a chance to be working in computers or medicine unless somebody takes them. And that if we started making this whole planet come up to speed. Sorry, we didn't tell you everything before, but we didn't think that you could handle it. Now we have allies and we know that we're okay, and we're going to bring the planet up to the 22nd century with all of you.
Well, it looks like there's some of it going on now with like the Times article from 2017 and the Nemitz and Princeton, the ships where they had UFOs on radar, and they had I think the Hornet aircraft go after them and saw the Tic Tac object and all that. And then they're also showing some films that might show UFOs from the DIA. And so it looks like there's a tiny bit of disclosure going on now,
right,
which is good.
Well, I think disclosure happened when the New York Times printed the article about the Nimitz affair. And the Navy has gone on record, and they have said just about a month ago, they said, no, they are UFOs. We don't understand them, and this did happen. People just kind of went on, and it really didn't have an effect. And you still have skeptics, out there that, oh, it's not real. And I think that perhaps it's an inconvenient truth for some folks, and they would rather just forget about it and pretend like we're not being observed and visited. So I think that we do live in a post-disclosure world. This is it.
Well, I think we're never going to have a full disclosure. I got this book from Nick Dolan. Yep. Richard Dolan. 8 book. It's an amazing book. After this after the disclosure, it's a great book. And he shows 3 options: a full disclosure, a half disclosure, and a lie disclosure. I believe that they're going to have is a half disclosure. They never gonna do a full disclosure, because if they do so, they will have to admit that they have been lying for decades.
Yep.
And what they're gonna say to those people that they accuse it to say that you are a liar, you're a mental illness, something like that, and the people lost jobs, lost families, lost their lives for a lie, a bigger lie. So I think that they're gonna be a medium, a half disclosure. Well, from this point forward, we can say that we have been visited. We can say what's going on, but that point back, they will not tell that was true. They cannot say that. There's no way.
Of course, we want our governments to be transparent about this, but let's take a look on the flip side of that real quick. So our whole lives, and our parents' whole lives, and their parents' whole lives, most of us it's been beat into our brain that, look, there's a heaven and a hell, and this is the way you need to be, what type of person you need to be, otherwise you're going to go to hell. So is that some sort of mind control that somebody put out there many, many years ago to control the masses? I don't know. Think about the government, for example. Knowing what we know about religion and what most people believe anyway, of some sort, if they came out and said, okay, there's little green men and they're coming from this planet and they've been visiting us for thousands of years, some people could not handle it. They would flip out. There might be some short-time anarchy, but I think as they trickle out this information, it's become more of pop culture now. It's more under, with all the movies and Hollywood and everything else. I think people would react a lot different nowadays, say, versus the 50s. Of course, there's going to be some people that just can't handle it, and flip out. But, maybe the government was taking that side of it. Who knows? Or there is a great deal of technology possibly to be gained, and if they have a deal with these aliens like some people think, or if they're jockeying to try to get this technology, because we all know, every country wants that technology to be the supreme technological advanced country on this planet. So, there's a lot of different aspects involved here with that.
I know the government NASA has already funded a $1.2 million study on this back in 2012 on how society would handle it, and especially the religious communities. I have the documents of that contract that went out by NASA, and I found it interesting that they would be asking the question for research's sake. And I think it's because they're looking to disclose it, and they don't know if it's time yet. And so they've already put it out to others to do the research for them, and unfortunately, I don't know what the results were. The post-disclosure is going to be both religious and economic in grandeur, only because I think people are going to have to do a whole lot of soul searching within the religious structures that we've grown up with on this planet to try to incorporate a life that was never written about. Well, I should say never written about. Revelations 12:12 has a passage in it that I now read and realize God may be talking about others living beyond us. But it's a paradigm shift that is so massive that it will cause a lot of strife. And as soon as you put it out that, oh, by the way, we've been getting help from ETs, and oh, by the way, we have 0-point energy, we never needed fossil fuels after all. The secondary anger that may come with that from a people deceived on this planet. We've been struggling so hard to keep our planet maintained at a decent level, and in the knowledge that we didn't have to be fighting ourselves this whole time will be a struggle.
I think the world will be in a much better place once that happens, and then everybody will realize there's much more than just this beautiful oasis we call Earth, that others need us and we need them. And that's just an opinion I've had for a very long time. We're going to be much better off.
You don't think there will be chaos everywhere, like the people in power tell us that it's the reason why they can't confirm this, because people can't handle it?
There's going to be a little bit of chaos to begin with, but once we realize there's nothing we can do about it, we're going to have to accept it, and it's a part of what we're going to do, and then they're going to show us it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. There are protectors too. We've got bad guys here. There are some bad guys out there, but I think basically the good guys are going to win on both sides.
So yeah, there's a disclosure. What I've sort of changed my opinion in the last couple of years is, and this is based upon watching what these very high level guys are saying, I don't really think the government has what people think they do. I used to think, they had it. There was one story that already started back in 1987. The three of the top guys, Jacques Vallée, Kid Green, and Hal Puthoff. Now, Kid Green and Hal Puthoff have perhaps the longest held top secret SCI clearances in the United States, along with Jacques Vallée, who's a prominent researcher. Get together at a Denny's restaurant in 1987, and they're looking at, what can we believe in the UFO phenomena? What's real? There's all this garbage floating around. What do we know for sure? And what they came up with was called the core story. We are being interacted by some sort of intelligence, whatever it is, ET, whatever it is. Number two, there's been a crash, and we have some material. We have at least one body, and we have some craft, but we haven't back engineered anything. It's so far beyond us. So you have these stories about, the deep state, and they've got ships going to other planets and stuff. What I've come to conclusion after 45 years is they don't have any of that stuff. Yes, they have one body at least. They have a craft intact. They have they have films that they know are UFO stuff. But in terms of figuring it out, they haven't got a clue. And that's what Kid Green said, who's now famously tied into the stars. He said 12 years ago, he said, Uncle Sam and the intelligence community are clueless. And there are intelligence people playing bad games. So that would be my conclusion is, yes, they're leading us. And I think the disclosure may have actually happened. You see Donald Trump, this whole thing with Donald Trump's comment where the Navy goes in and briefs the president. So they show him the videos, the Nimitz. Yes, Nimitz happened. There was a UFO sighting, big deal. It was a UFO sighting. They show him the videos. They say, Mr. President, these videos are real. These are unidentified. And then Trump, as he publicly stated, said, I don't know. I don't know if it's really I don't know if I believe in extraterrestrials. And that's where I think they are. That you have a situation where, yes, the phenomena is real, but in terms of where it's going, that's where I get into the consciousness thing, where in 2012, I shifted gears, realized I was on the wrong train, and realized that consciousness is a key part of this thing. So if you hear people in the government talking about nuts and bolts, free energy, they haven't got a clue.
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
It's already happening, and it has been. The beautiful work of Hollywood, even if you don't like Hollywood, the beautiful work that they are doing in the films is good, but the bad part that they're doing in the films is the majority of them are looking like we have to fight them.
Right.
And that's what I'm concerned about. The good part is that they're showing and exposing people to technology and things that already exist and that were already out there, and that there are people that have all these kind of powers and so forth. But the bad part is that they're creating all these scenarios that every ET is bad and we have to fight them, when there already are fights out there going on. So I am concerned about false flags occurring, and I am concerned that disclosure is not happening from the highest ranks.
Right.
I do pray that the president will be a part of that disclosure on a larger scale. I hope they will allow him to do so. They haven't done with the presidents in the past, but I do hope that he's a pretty strong fella, whether you like him or not. He's a pretty strong person, and I do hope that it will occur under his watch on a greater scale.
Yeah, I think that what we're having is a drip feed disclosure now. It's this, the Navy coming out, and then more and more people starting to share. That's the one that the government is doing. But there's a far bigger disclosure going on. It's coming from the ground up. And these are people finally talking about, writing about their stories, sharing their stories on the internet. Credible people writing, as I say, more and more about what's happened to them in their lives around this experience and whatever. So I believe that's the groundswell of mainstream waking up and realizing that this is real. And that, I think, is the main thing that's going on in real disclosure. How's it going to change things? At some point, there's a tipping point where it's no longer fringe and it's mainstream, and people are talking about, I remember going up on the spacecraft. I mean, the Japanese Prime Minister's wife talks about going up on spaceships to Venus and all sorts of things. I mean, so there's a Prime Minister's wife talking about it here. We've got a few politicians. We've got a lot of different celebrities that have been talking about this. That, I think, is the real disclosure, because it's people, credible people, who are saying, you know what, this has been all my life, this has been my experience, I'm not round the bend, I'm not crazy. But how will it change things? I think there's going to, then the governments are going to be pushed into being more truthful. But the big thing is, and you know this as well, Dean, is that once they realize that we have technologies from these craft and from these beings that will provide free energy, healing, a whole shift in how this planet is run from these technologies, I think people are going to get very pissed off that they've been lied to for 80 or 90 years.
Well, I've been down the rabbit hole for a lot of years with guys like Bob Lazar, Colonel Hill, Jesse Marcel Jr., witnesses, abductees, the whole gamut. And then 2017 was the red letter day, a line in the sand, a line of demarcation, crossing the Rubicon, whatever analogy you want to throw in there. But when Tucker Carlson had Commander David Fravor, the former F-18 pilot, who states on the record when Tucker asked him, where do you think this craft was from? And Fravor looks right at the camera and says, whatever this was not of this world. So that's disclosure. We call that the first rung on the disclosure ladder. The second rung was when Luis Elizondo appeared. Between the first rung and the second rung, Tucker had Nick Pope, a whole bunch of people on the record talking about UFOs in general. But the second rung on the ladder was finally arrived at when Tucker asked Luis Elizondo this, in my opinion, which was a heavily scripted question. And Tucker says, in your opinion, does the American government have in their possession wreckage from a crashed UFO? And Elizondo goes, yes. And Tucker asked him again, are you saying that the United States government has debris from a crashed UFO? And then Elizondo kind of hems and haws, really bad acting, Luis, and goes, well, you know, my non-disclosure agreement forbids me to really answer this, but the short answer is yes. Well, Mr. Elizondo, with all due respect, you're a really smart guy, but you just blew out your NDA because you were allowed to blow out your NDA. So he says it twice, not a blink. The American people, not a blink, not a nod. Honey, what's for dinner? That's basically it. No one moved. So we're at the second rung. They're going to show the third rung, which I believe will be real footage of crashed discs, or even perhaps retrieval of so-called alien bodies. It'll be something like that.
Well, I'd like to think that we're certainly on the brink of it if it hasn't happened already. I think December 16th, 2017 was a pretty close arrival or horizon for disclosure. It looks to me like with what the Navy's coming out with and the gun footage that's been released, and the open discussions which are now happening, and the new television shows which are out there. You know, we have, I think, is it called Unacknowledged, possibly? Yep. There's a number of great new shows that are out there. And the boys from TTSA, To the Stars Academy. These top military, former military people and Pentagon people like Luis Elizondo, Jim Semivan, Chris Mellon, they are bringing their years of experience to the table and making it public to the American people who are curious. Now, they're being debunked and they're being ridiculed. And you have other people like Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry. I think that they do know what they're talking about. And I think there have always been people inside the inner circles, the inner close military circles, who have felt that we needed to be honest about this. And I think that we're certainly seeing it. It might be disclosure with what we call a little d, because it's not, you know, President Trump coming forward and saying, well, folks, we've lied about this for 60, 70 years. Now we're going to tell you the truth.
You know, I think we're going to go through a disclosure process. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be in the timeline that we all want. But it's already happening. I mean, September 16th was a huge monumental day in the UFO community. And unfortunately, it didn't make the headline news, the front page news like we all had hoped. But nevertheless, there was a formal acknowledgement of the U.S. government that, yes, UFOs exist. And that's huge. Yeah. We're taking steps in the right direction. Are we going to find out in our lifetime that, hey, yeah, we're all, you know, part alien or whatever? I don't know. I think it'd be awesome. I would love that. I think that would be great to finally know the truth. And it's going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow because, you know, we have to think of all the different facets of our world. It's not as simple as just, you know, aliens showing up on our front lawn and saying, hey, we're here. You know, and I get asked that question a lot. Melisa, you know, you're the UFO woman. Tell us, why haven't they just showed up on their front yard? Well, that would be bad. That would be bad because think about, you know, the image of some of the Hollywood movies like Independence Day. They show up on the White House lawn and, you know, everybody panics. Probably not the best approach. You know, socially, economically, religiously, spiritually. I mean, there'd be a whole lot of facets that we got to take into consideration. So it has not been done that way on purpose.
Well, I think there will be big change. I think there will be turmoil initially. But in the long run, we'll have a planet that we're able to sustain. We will have this free energy for everybody. And we will be raised to a higher vibrational frequency where I believe we will become more intelligent, we'll be more empathic, more compassionate towards one another. And we will probably dispense with all the tribal wars that we have over land, over money, over fuels. we will no longer need that. And then we will be a healthy population because we will be given information in relation to how to heal ourselves and technologies to help us assist us in that. So I think the long-term prognosis is very good. The short-term, there will be some turmoil, I'm sure. And I'm sure it's not an easy road. I know I speak about it. It's my mission now. They've asked me to do it, and I'm fully committed to doing it. But I'm under no illusion. It's a huge undertaking for a planet such as us to change our views, change our values, and welcome these higher conscious beings, these visitors, to assist us.
Now, I hope that what happened in 1947 doesn't happen again, because that information was suppressed when there was an indication of public hysteria. On December 16, 2017, on the front page of the New York Times, there was an article about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that ran out of the Pentagon. And this was the beginning of the disclosure of this information. There are many members of the public who are interested in this, but most of the public appears to be just going about their business with their daily lives and their personal interests. I recently spoke at a conference, and it was a small conference, maybe about 250 people. I asked the audience how many people had seen that article or were aware of this, and only 2 hands in the audience went up. So I was very surprised by that, but it was a kind of a small conference that draws the general public and not just individuals who are interested in UFOs and do a lot of research and reading on that topic. Now, if we had this kind of disclosure, and then we slowly introduced the idea that there are some sentient beings on these craft and they will not harm us, it might be okay with the public.
Post-disclosure world is going to be a very peaceful and verdant world eventually, because of the spiritual nature of human beings. I think disclosure, whether it's government disclosure, people just realizing that ET is here and they're here to help us and to stay. I think the religions are going to have a difficult time, and the people that buy into the dogma that the different religions purvey are going to have a difficult time, because this is a brand new paradigm. So the post-disclosure paradigm will immediately cause some problems, but I think eventually it'll lead to a better world. And one of the things that I'm writing now is much of my study has been with religious texts, and I'm writing, this is part of the download that I spoke about earlier, is the paradigm of leadership in a post-disclosure world is going to be completely different from what we have today. In a post-disclosure world, the paradigm will be having people in charge that are spiritually attuned, that have earned the trust of other people, that are not the sociopaths and materialists that we have. Everybody is going to matter. We're going to have, 0-point energy. Just think about it. Instead of burning money up, we're actually going to have free energy that will completely free the planet. We're slaves in so many ways to the large conglomerates that control our energy and cause us to, blood and sweat to purchase it. So that will be freed up, and the nature of leadership will change. And I think the nature of leadership is going to be based on what's best for others and not what's best for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about disclosure, I've discussed it with colleagues on and off down the decades. First and foremost, who would you have deliver disclosure? Would you believe the US President? Would you believe the Secretary General of the United Nations? Would you believe it if the Pope said it, So in the current climate, would you believe it if Donald Trump told you? I don't know. So we also add to the fact that there are great proportions of mankind still alive today and were not linked to the internet, who have no access. So whichever body or person you had announced it, there would still be a large proportion who would not believe it. You know, for example, there's a big proportion of don't believe we landed on the moon, despite all the evidence. And then you would have another portion of humanity who wouldn't even hear about it in the first place. But I've said, okay, let's assume we can pick on an organization that we would choose to deliver the message. Would it really change your life that much, Dean? Tomorrow, I still have to pay my electricity bill, you know? I still have to take the dog for a walk. It's still gonna rain. So perhaps on a certain level, it wouldn't really change an awful lot.
Well, it's certainly been talked about since the day I got involved in it. And it was always sort of like on the horizon tomorrow, and it's never happened. But what we do see is a continuous sort of process. I do think it will happen. I think it's inevitable. I don't think UFOs are going to go away. It seems to me the UFOs have a sort of an agenda of disclosure as well, though they too, you know, could do it in a day and aren't. So it seems to me it's very tightly controlled, and that it will come forth, but I'm not sure it's going to be tomorrow or even the next day, but hopefully within our lifetimes, we're going to see some very major differences in how this subject is treated as it, you know, from today.
Well, I think we've had unofficial disclosure. I think there's been 20-some countries that have had either partial or full disclosure already. And you can find those listed on the internet. So I think we've had disclosure in that sense. The second sense is, I think in December of, I believe it was 2017, when the New York Times and Politico ran the front page article on the To the Stars initiative and the subsequent articles that have come from that. That is another unofficial disclosure. I think possibly had the election turned out differently and Hillary would have been elected and Podesta would have come in, I think there would have been some movement toward an overt disclosure. Now, I don't know what kind of disclosure that would have been either, quite frankly. I mean, certainly with Trump, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but his uncle was John Trump, was part of the MIT Rad Lab. So, you know, now we have the Space Council has been reenacted. We have the Space Force that is moving through official recognition channels. Now, is that disclosure? That's a part of disclosure. I think that it's going to really take a lot of different pieces put together. Has Hollywood had disclosure? I would say yes.
I think for anybody who's waiting for that magic moment when the American government, where the secrecy began and where the worst repression of any real information coming out, unlike many other governments at this point, waiting for them to come clean, shouldn't be holding their breath. Part of the problem is that, let's just say we lived in a world where one world leader could simply come forward and make all this public, and maybe someday one of them will. But now it's much more complicated. A responsible world leader would have to network with other world leaders, with world religious leaders, leading figures in the world of psychology, the economy, science. It would have to be well coordinated. But hypothetically, if, let's say, the President of the United States, this president, the last president, the next president were to come forward on television one night in a special press conference and say, my fellow Americans and citizens of the world, it is my solemn duty to inform you, etc. They would be admitting by implication that every single president since Harry Truman, and including Harry Truman, was an unindicted co-conspirator in the greatest secret, the greatest deception in the history of humanity. And that's a touchy subject for powerful people.
The big problem I have with disclosure is not
possibility that it could come. I mean, it may come, but the big issue I have, and which goes back at least 20 years, is that, you know, I can pinpoint people after people who've said, you know, disclosure's coming next week, or it's coming next year, or I've got a high-ranking source in the Pentagon who's told me, you know, it's coming 3 p.m. next Thursday or whatever. You know, it's almost, for me at least, it's got to almost like the boy who cried wolf scenario. You know, he cried wolf so many times, and when the wolf really came, you know, and attacked him, nobody would listen, because it was just, you know, just the story was just going on. And that's how I kind of see the whole disclosure movement. My view is that if they've got something legitimate to say and hard evidence that disclosure is coming on this date, or it's going to come in the next couple of months, that's great. Tell us how you found it and provide us the data. But I've seen so many people in the field who I can, you know, I can bring out audio cassettes from the 90s. I can bring out, you know, footage from conferences from the last few months where people who are pro-disclosure said, yes, it's coming, and we've been told this. But time and again, it doesn't come. So my view for the people in the disclosure field is either put up what you've got or shut up until you've got something 100% solid to share with us.
There is no pending disclosure. Disclosure is happening right now. Okay? My book has 4,200 people that have disclosed the reality of what's going on. Okay? You don't need the federal government to tell you what's going on. Do you need Donald Trump to tell us? No? So, no. I'd rather believe a fellow experiencer who I meet all the time, who email me all the time, tell me about their multidimensional experiences. That's true disclosure. True disclosure is taking place from the bottom up. No, disclosure is taking place. We don't need the federal government to tell us about disclosure. All you need to do is to talk to experiencers.
I think people get stuck in their religious belief systems, and people get stuck in their negativities or their, you know, their grand illusions of this, that, or the other thing. But this is the truth. These dimensions are with us. We are not alone here. We never have been. And that alone should be the big ticket item. We should know we've never been alone. You know, so that should give people a clue to look in this direction. And we all know religions don't work because we know they're human initiated, most of them. But that doesn't take away from the truth that God is real. He is. But he doesn't have anything to do with all this nonsense. The extraterrestrials don't have anything to do with all this nonsense. You know, it's man who muddies the water.
I have a feeling that, well, first of all, December 2017, there was the article in the New York Times by Leslie Kean. Leslie Kean and I were just together recently. We spoke at Rice University to faculty and PhD candidates on the topic. I spoke on abduction. She spoke on the UFO phenomenon. And that 2017 soft disclosure in Huffington Post, New York Times, and then picked up by CNN, where they showed Lieutenant Commander, or was it Commander Fravor's view through the gun camera and his description of these amazing objects. You know, having been in the military, I know that a commander doesn't unilaterally go on television and disclose things like that and have access to gun camera footage unless the United States government authorizes it and provides him with the material. So that to me was a soft disclosure.
Well, I don't believe that if any of the listeners are waiting for someone to come up to a podium and make a grand announcement, that's not going to happen. Disclosure has been going on for at least 15 to 20 years now in the form of the media we've been exposed to. Shows like Ancient Aliens, radio shows like Coast to Coast AM. These are all things which could not have existed in the 60s or 70s. The shell started cracking with things like Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, which of course did very well in theaters, as did the book. And I'll credit that as being the start of the crack in the ice, perhaps. Yeah. Because then people started talking about it and looking at the evidence that was presented there and saying, well, you know, maybe. Yeah. And that started the discussions.
I could support this statement with a very long discussion.
and I give lectures. And my lectures are all over the internet. You can find them on YouTube. They're coming up, where I talk about this. But if, because of developments with the To the Stars Academy over the last 3 years, actually 2 years, though they were formed before that, if the political crisis in America is resolved soon, and we have a stable situation under some president, exactly who, I can't say at this point. I believe we will very shortly see very aggressive new developments regarding this issue, and a lot of those are going to come directly or indirectly from the government itself. And the media, which has been thoroughly drenched in this issue for a long time, not able to do what we wanted to do, but done a lot. The media fully knows that this is the biggest story of all time. And so we could easily hit in 2020 a crossing point. The media finally jumps in completely, and disclosure virtually is inevitable. A head of state is going to act. They're not going to let the media literally lead them by the nose into the most profound event in human history. They're going to seize the glory, seize the legacy. And it may not be an American president. So I think that 2020 looks very interesting. But on this side of the political chaos in America, again, it's hard to see.